Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Yarby Laws, and these are my co-hosts.
Christopher Wells.
Top notch.
We appreciate all the support on our recent content. And before we do get started, please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the OBT Podcast for more content and updates.
Yep, so we got a lot to talk about. We got LeBron's return, and we also have a few teams and rumors to talk about. So let's get into it. So we have the return of LeBron James. He returned to the Lakers a few nights ago, and so far, solid debut, right? 11 points, 12 assists, 3 rebounds, 4 of 7 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3. And when you first saw him come back, when you saw that starting five, it did look big, but it also looked slow, right? Defensively, they were switching everything. You had everybody on the Jazz kind of finding ways to score. Keontae George would score on, say, guys like Rui or DeAndre Ayton, Lauri Markkanen when he was switched on to smaller guys like Austin Reeves. He would find ways to score. Right then in the second half, they were able to kind of focus and lock in. LeBron was basically playing the role of point guard in the fourth quarter. Then they went on a huge run in the second half to pretty much put the game away. And you still, when you look around at the rest of the guys, like Luka still chipped in with 37 and 10. Austin Reeves still put up 26 and 5, 7 of 11 from the field. Ayton had 20 points, 14 rebounds. A lot of those buckets came directly from LeBron's assists. It seemed like Rui was kind of the odd man out in the starting five, and this is something that we talked about in the summer in terms of who do you start as that fifth guy, where you, Yarby, made the case for Marcus Smart because of his defense, because of his ability to guard multiple positions in a way that, Rui can guard some of the bigger players, but he doesn't offer as much defensively in terms of guarding guards or, some certain types of wings. So defensively, they're still probably going to have some issues, which is what we knew going into the season. But identity-wise, it seems like the identity is the potential for an elite offense. They have been a good offensive team, even without not being a great or high volume 3-point shooting team, mostly mid range and in, getting to the free throw line, getting to the rim. So LeBron coming back makes them bigger, does make them more athletic. It squeezed a couple guys out of the rotation. We didn't see Jared Vanderbilt. That was a guy who at one time was a starter for the Lakers a couple seasons ago. So solid debut from him, right? He mentioned it sounded like he heard a lot of people talking about the idea that he might come back and make the team worse. We all thought, we assumed that he would help make the team better. And, it's the Utah Jazz who don't guard anybody, but it's a nice opportunity to just kind of get back in there and kind of find ways to impact the game even beyond just scoring, right? And they were able to make some plays where you had the LeBron Austin two-man game where they're also setting screens for Luka, right, to kind of try to involve all three players at the same time because they didn't really do that a whole lot last season, right? And that was kind of post-trade deadline. They were kind of just throwing things together. But what did you two think of his debut?
I thought it was solid, right? I don't think it was anything, spectacular or special. I think, he came up with winning plays, right, on both ends of the floor for sure. But offensively, I think is where you have to look at his game here, right? Like super efficient, knocked down a couple of threes, and that was something that we had kind of talked about, right? Was his 3-point shooting. He's probably gonna, be one of their better, guys from distance like that. And at the end of the day, at this point in his career, his number one job is probably going to be to take pressure off of Luka Doncic, and then Austin Reeves being, that filler guy as well. It's really a match made in heaven, if you ask me, right? And, it's like LeBron is pretty much doing everything that Luka does, just at a lower volume, especially in this game, right? Like the playmaking was there, and the high volume of offense, you get from Luka, and then AR being kind of like that middle piece and that best third option in the league, like we talked about last year. So, nothing but, love and praise for me.
Yeah, I think we talked about this maybe off stream or maybe on stream. I forgot, but there's nothing. I didn't think it was going to be a negative or like that. This LeBron James, right? Like he's the greatest of all time for a reason. He can fit in whenever he wants. It is interesting though. He took 7 shots. That's probably going to go up, right? Like 4 for 7 is not a typical LeBron stat, but 11 points, 12 assists, 3 rebounds. He brings so much. Like LeBron's not the greatest defender, but when he actually tries, he could be a good defender. He could. When he actually goes out there and tries and gets his chase down blocks or, he'll get a stop for like good stop and get the crowd going. Probably won't play defense for another 10 plays. But, that brings the energy going, gets his teammates rowdy up and stuff like that. So I didn't like it's a positive, right? I will say though about Jared Vanderbilt, he shouldn't have even been playing anyways. That dude's awful. Like he has no offensive game at all, not one bit. He can't shoot. He can hardly make a damn layup. You put him in the Ducker spot, that's fine. But when you also go in the postseason, the defense is going to be like, all right, it's a 4-5. We're just going to X him out the game. Boop, boop. He's gone. You can't do nothing about it. And I also feel like with Jared Vanderbilt, like if you don't have him a assignment, like go lock down Curry, he's not the good defender that he is. But I know this is a LeBron topic, but Jared Vanderbilt needs to stay out the rotation for a little bit until injuries happen again. But yeah, I mean, not surprised about this at all.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you mentioned with the Vando because that's was kind of the issue in the postseason, right? Where it's like, okay, offensively, like you mentioned, he can't shoot. He's also not a great finisher around the rim. So where can you really stick him? And then even on defense, right? He's more of a chaotic defender where, if you put him, like you said, on a specific guy like a Steph, or I think he guarded Ja Morant in the postseason when they played Memphis, right? He can do that for stretches. But then there's other times where he makes a lot of silly mistakes, like even in the Minnesota series defensively. He had possessions where he'd get the rebound and then lose it and then just commit a foul and just make mistakes. And it does feel like he might be getting phased out. So we'll see if they kind of slide different guys in there. We know this is a team that needs to make some type of personnel moves. But for now, you got LeBron back, and that's kind of the main thing where you just kind of go from there. What do you think top notch in terms of starting Rui? Like, do you think that that's kind of the move, or do you think that you eventually kind of move to Marcus Smart or someone else?
So I think if you're gonna move to Marcus Smart, you already have to do it. If you're not gonna do it now, you don't want to go in the postseason and then run a different lineup, right? You want to be more comfortable with the lineup that you ran with all 82 games or damn near a good amount of games, right? You want to have that connection because I feel like when you start switching lineups up, certain players don't have certain connections with certain people, and it just messes things up, right? I personally thought Marcus Smart should have started. It only boosts up the Lakers bench because if you think about it, the Lakers bench isn't the greatest. I think that's one of their main weaknesses. Because if you look at it, right, Jake LaVavia is pretty good. Gabe Vincey can't stay healthy, right? Jackson Haynes is he's okay, right? He's okay, and then Marcus Smart. But I think with Rui, um, he's more of that mid-range shooter. He can shoot the three, but he also another thing I do want to say is he also has to get set up, right? So you still got to have like a Luka out there. You have to have a LeBron out there for him to have his open looks and stuff. Like he's not going to go out there like and create every single shot. He's not. That's not who Rui is. But yeah, I think you go Smart just because of the defensive pressure that he brings. Um, I just think it makes more sense, right? You go less scoring, but dude, you have LeBron, Luka, and AR out there, right? So that doesn't matter at that point, right? And it's just going to make Rui less effective with that lineup.
Mhm. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. It probably would have to take them losing a bunch of games for them to feel like they have to change the starting five, right? I doubt they're going to be winning games and make it, but it is something to keep an eye on moving forward, especially if Rui is considered in any potential trade talks. So, moving on to the next topic. This was one that came out recently, and this is from Kelly Eco, right? And this relates to LaMelo Ball, where in his report, he mentioned LaMelo Ball is open to a trade after growing increasingly frustrated with the Hornets, right? LaMelo, after the first couple games of the season, has kind of had a drop off in terms of his play, where the last few games that he's come back, because he missed some games due to injury, but it feels like he hasn't had a good game in a while, right? His last few games, he shot 5 for 21 in a loss to Indiana, right? Which I believe was Indiana's second win of the season. 6 for 19 in a loss to Toronto, right? Talk about them in a minute. 5 for 15 in a loss to Milwaukee. 7 for 19 in a loss to Minnesota. So a lot of really poor performances. Some of the games plus minuses are okay, but who knows? Now he did refute it. He was asked about it by a reporter, and on social media, he also kind of posted a clown emoji to refute that report was going on. Who knows? It could be to save face. Not sure, right? Because there are other players that have been in trade talks this season. But the main thing is that for a guy like LaMelo Ball, I mean, we know he is a talented player, but one of the problems is he's the talented player that can't really stay on the floor, right? Like in terms of his games played over the last several seasons, it just hasn't really worked out, right? Like he played 51 games his rookie year. That was a shortened year, right? I think that was the second COVID year. Then you had 75 games. That was the All-Star year. Then 36, 22, 47, and 9. And just in terms of the efficiency, we've talked about he's basically like low 40s, shoots a lot of threes. There are stretches like a couple seasons ago where he plays really well against some good teams, but it's just been inconsistent. And he gets paid a ton of money. He's on a big max deal. I'm curious to see what Charlotte decides to do with that because they do have a lot of good players. But you do feel like you just wish that you could see more games of this group together, right? Because Brandon Miller already hurt. He's expected to come back soon, but he's missed some games, right? Con Knipple as a rookie has been really good. Ryan Kalkbrenner has been really good. But I don't necessarily know if I'm ready to just say, let's trade him. I mean, we'll see what that looks like, I suppose, in terms of teams that he could be moved to, teams that could potentially use a point guard. Who knows? Maybe he's like a Dallas location. Maybe it's an Orlando location, Minnesota. I mean, but there's not a whole lot of teams where I'm like, if you're looking to potentially upgrade and try to win, I don't know if he's going to be the first choice. But what do you two think about this situation? Do you buy that he's potentially frustrated and asking to get out of Charlotte? Because you would almost think it would, at times would be the other way around, given the lack of availability. And at times it feels like, in some areas he may not have progressed the way that you would have wanted him to.
Right. We haven't seen him in like a whole lot of winning situations. That's the unfortunate part, right? Like the last time we really saw that was I think they were in a play-in game or something like that a few years back. So nothing really special coming out of Charlotte recently. And I think you and I have fallen in love with, the potential of that team and that potential of the
Yep.
group of guys, right? And you have a bunch of talent around, all those guys. Granted, not as many veterans as there probably should be, but we know that he can score the ball. We know that he can play make. We obviously know that he can't really defend. He's a high volume player. But yeah, it all comes back to winning basketball. So I don't know what the market is for a player like that, where he has all the star potential. He has all the physicals, I think, too. Durability is always a question with him. But at the end of the day, if it's a mutual feeling of like, yeah, you can't be our centerpiece guy, and he's also not happy, then I could for sure see a trade happening, and especially like to a big market team, because the guy, he's box office. Love or hate him, he's gonna, sell out your arenas at the end of the day. But I don't really know what to make of it. Is there truth behind it? Probably, I would say. I don't think anybody would really manufacture that one for no reason like that. So I think there's a potential that we see him, get moved on from. It's just a matter of what does the deal look like, how much money is going to be involved, because like you said, it's a big freaking contract, and who's willing to really give up a lot, I guess, for a player that really can't stay on the floor.
So I'm not the biggest fan of LaMelo Ball. Let me get this straight, right? I think he's talented, but I think there's too much negatives more than pros, right? So when you look at his contract, he's making $37 million. But the next 3 years, he's making 40 to 43 to $46 million. With the new CBA rule, that plays a big factor. LaMelo Ball, in my opinion, is not a number one A guy. He can't be that superstar to lead you to a championship. So when you're getting paid this much money, you have to lead that team. Technically, right? Technically, in my opinion, because you're taking half of the salary. So one, that's a problem. Two, his shot IQ is horrible. Sometimes he thinks it's Chino Hill still. This is the NBA, LaMelo, right? Let's stop playing around. Like Khristopher said, the last 3 games that he played, he went 5 for 15, 6 for 19, and 5 for 21, right? So his IQ isn't the greatest. He can't play defense. So now these are big things, right? Another thing, durability. You can't stay healthy. The most games that he played in his career was that 21-22 year, played 75. After that, he never touched 50 plus games at 23, 24 years old. That's a big concern, right? His numbers this year all dropped down. And I understand it's only 9 games played, but your field goal percentage as a guard should never be 30s. He's at 38% and shooting 30% from the 3-point line. Not good, right? I think personally, it is the opposite. I think Charlotte should be more frustrated with him, right? They drafted him thinking, okay, yo, listen, this is going to be my franchise guy. This is possibly going to turn the franchise around, and they just haven't really seen it. These ankle injuries don't go away. Steph Curry's ankle injuries did went away because whatever the case may be, but I feel like LaMelo's dealing with ankle injuries every 10 games. He plays 10 games, he's hurt. 10 games later, he's hurt again, right? Like they're cursed. Brandon Miller has all the talent in the world, injured once again. So I personally think they go with Brandon Miller, Con Canepo, that big man that they drafted, can never pronounce his last name. I think it's Ryan something. But you move off for LaMelo. The problem is with LaMelo is with all those negatives, it's the NBA executives and GMs, they all know that. They all know that type of stuff. So I don't know what's his trade value. I don't know what you do with him. The last thing I will say is when we seen him play a Portland game, he was awful. That was in the play-in tournament. He did not play well at all. So that's the only important game that we really got to see him being in a playoff environment, and he struggled. So was there, but I'm tired of hearing potential, potential, potential. He's been in the league for what, 6, 7 years now? The potential thing is over. You got to show it now. Thing about LaMelo, said he is box office and all me crazy. Minnesota needs a point guard. Try something.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of trades in the trade machine that maybe, I don't know if they're going to be that great, with a couple of the teams I mentioned, right? Like, say, if it's Dallas, Kyrie Irving, Dante Exum, just wave Exum, and then basically just swap the two. I don't know what Charlotte does with Kyrie. Do they keep him or whatever? And then for Minnesota, right? I just did Gobert, Rob Dillingham. Could you swap those two for LaMelo Ball? I don't know if they would do that just because defensively they can't really seem to guard if Rudy Gobert's not out there. For the Orlando one, other than if it was LaMelo Ball and Desmond Bain straight up, I couldn't really figure out a way to get one where you just put other contracts together, unless you're basically attaching like 4, 5, 6 different Orlando players, and I don't think they'd really do that either. Are there any other sneaky LaMelo Ball teams that maybe you might have on your mind?
I got the Celtics. Call me crazy. The Celtics. Listen, Celtics don't have a point guard right now. You could say Peyton Pritchard, but I think they're gonna. Is he a starting next year with Tatum? I don't know. Whatever they do, right? That's just the team I thought of off the top of my head. Miami's always going to be a destination. I'm good with Davion. We don't need LaMelo. Don't put him on my team because if LaMelo's on my team, I'm gonna start raging every single day. But those were going to be destinations. The Phoenix Suns. I thought this one was interesting. You could possibly put Jalen Green and maybe another piece for LaMelo and run LaMelo, Devin Booker, something like that. But the trade destinations is hard. If you think about it, all the players that are somewhat in the trade rumors, every single trade this year is hard. The Anthony Davis trade is hard. The Ja trade is hard. LaMelo trade is hard. The Zach LaVine trade, the Sabonis, DeRozan. I think DeRozan's going to be a salary dump. But either way, all these players that are supposed to get traded at the trade deadline, they're all hard. Big contracts, and they're just not worth trading your draft capital for them.
Yeah, that's the tough part for some of these teams, right? In terms of trying to figure out where we're going to move guys, other teams that we'll probably mention over the course of the season leading up to the trade deadline. Like if you're the Warriors and you got Kuminga, like where are you going to send him in terms of like which team is going to, give stuff back where you're okay with trading him? I don't know how they feel about it, but yeah, those are interesting destinations. Like you mentioned with Boston, could you maybe take Anthony Simons and use him plus a couple other guys, right? Boston, since they got out of the apron, they probably have more flexibility. And that's the other tricky part, right? Like some of these other teams are already in that first apron. So then they can't take back more salary than they send out, which makes that trickier. You can only trade with certain types of teams. So it's tough. I mean, as of right now, I think the main hope is have them come back, continue to play, hopefully stay healthy. Hopefully the team gets healthy and then kind of just see where we're at as we get closer to the deadline, right? Like you probably don't really want this out in the air right now. And even if it is, I don't think he would get traded right now anyways. Like if it were to happen, that's probably closer to a deadline type of move anyways. And I'm not necessarily going to predict what happens, but it's like we've all talked about. Trades are difficult, and unless you kind of rope in multiple teams and unless you can find two teams that kind of have two problems to solve, and we probably won't know quite as much about that framework until a little bit later in the season. So now moving on to another topic, the Detroit Pistons, right? A little bit more of a positive one, right? They have continued to win and win and win. They've won 11 in a row. They're 13-2. They're number one in the Eastern Conference. And it just seems like, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter who's out there. They found diamonds in the rough, right? Dennis Jenkins, who just kind of comes out of nowhere and just all of a sudden looks like a real rotational guy, right? Who can just make big shots. in big moments, right? They don't have a lot of three-point shooting, but just another guy that they can turn to. They're second in defensive rating. They are 12th in offensive rating. So right now they're looking like one of the big bad teams in the NBA, right? Cade Cunningham, led by him, as well as Jalen Duren, which is a guy that took a leap that I don't think we were necessarily expecting. He's averaging 21 and 12 right now, basically playing like one of the best bigs in the NBA. And this was a guy where Yarby and I, going into the season, when we were talking about contract extensions, when we were trying to predict which guys do and don't get rookie extensions, we were like, yeah, we don't think Detroit is going to give him one because we don't feel like as of that point, he had probably proven enough to feel like, okay, this is going to be our legit franchise starting center going forward, right? Because last season he averaged 12 and 10, but a lot of his best games were the second half of the season. Could he put together a full season's run? And so far through the first 13 games, so far he has, where he's just a terror around the basket. I remember when we saw him in the Vegas Summer League, and he would have possessions where he would have the ball and actually dribble the ball face up, right, driving to the basket. And we're kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Can we see more of that potentially? And he wasn't doing that season, but he's been doing it now, where it's not like he's just a classic traditional pick and roll center. He's got some real game and like a lot of other moves in his bag, where he's just super versatile. Short roll pass has looked amazing. And this is a team that does not have a lot of three-point shooting, right? Most of their offense comes around the paint. They foul a lot. They have the two bigs with him and Isaiah Stewart together, where Isaiah Stewart's basically a 40% three-point shooter, with Tobias Harris out. So they've been winning even with injuries, even when nobody's played. It's impressive. And this was a team that I picked the over on with the over under, because my just thought process was, all right, we're going to see what the young guys look like, even though they've lost some veterans, but I don't know how, great that they'll look. I kind of still thought that they'd probably be somewhere in the bottom half of the top six, right? But right now, they look like they might be poised for a top three seed, right? It's still relatively early in the season, but with the way they've played, I don't know. I mean, this is looking like a really scary team. I'm still a little bit concerned about in the postseason. You don't have a lot of 3-point shooting, so how far can you realistically go? But it at least looks like a team that I could see winning a round in the playoffs, right? Because last year, we talked about it early in this season. They couldn't really close a lot of games in the postseason against the Knicks because that was a very winnable series for them, right? They lost in six, but most of the losses were very close, decided by a handful of possessions. But they look a lot more poised now. Could they do something? I'm not sure, but what do we think of this team right now? Because so far they look like one of the big surprises in the NBA. I know we all liked the Pistons, but I don't think we expected this.
Yeah, bro. I mean, I don't even really know where to start, but I guess you should start with like Cade, because I mean, it really does at the end of the day start at the top with this team, right? The guy is insane in the clutch, and honestly, he might win Clutch Player of the Year with how many possessions that he's kind of just taken over the game with. Like it's just crazy, but his efficiency's gone up. He's still shooting the three ball pretty okay, but it's his ability to work inside the arc that I'm just, kind of infatuated with alongside Jalen Duren, right? Like him figuring out with him is probably the best case scenario. So they're both, accelerating with their development. It's just wild that Cade has just popped off like he has and, showed us why he's the number one pick and can actually lead a franchise, right? But I thought going into this season, they were going to take a little bit of a step back because, you lost Schroeder, you lost Malik Beasley as well, and then you just brought in Duncan Robinson. I was like, this is not a good offseason in my opinion, but lo and behold, here they are. They're just balling out, all the young guys cooking, even a Sore Thompson, right? Like I know we talked about Amen Thompson a lot, but Asor, I think he deserves his flowers, in terms of what he's able to do on the defensive end of things. So, and like you said, Jenkins as well, kind of coming out of nowhere and being another guy, offensively and defensively that can just kind of ball out. And they won a couple of games without Cade Cunningham too. So it's not like, the team sucks if Cade's not on the floor. So shout out to them. They don't even have Jaden Ivey back yet either. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're probably going to keep winning games.
Yeah, I mean, this Detroit team is fun, man. Listen, I really wish they. I was high on this team when I thought they had a chance to beat the Knicks last year in the postseason. I think they. I wish they did. I don't like the Knicks. But this year, I'm sure if they match up again, I think that would be a really good matchup once again. But Cade and Duren. they got their 2 guys, and the crazy thing about it, I just seen another report about Duran that they're far away from the contract extension, and if somehow, some way they do not get this figured out, it's a loss on them because he's having a breakout season. Either way, though, this team, I love depth. Depth wins you championships. I always say 3 things win you championship, right? You got your 2 guys, your 3 guys that can lead you to your star guys, right? Your role players, good coaching, and some good defense, right? They got their 2 star guys, if you want to consider Duran and Cade, right? Those are your 2 star guys, but they're depth. And depth won them games already. Paul Reed doesn't get talked about. He just had a monster game a couple of days ago, or probably a week ago from now, dominating, right? They didn't have nobody out there, but they said it don't matter. We're gonna still win these games, and that's why they're the hottest team in the league, right? Um, Last year they were 44 wins or something like that. I think they had 44 wins, 38 losses. Their away record was 22-19, and their home record was 22-19. This year they're 7-1 at home and 5-1 away. The last 10 they're 10-0, and obviously an 11-game win streak. So pretty impressive. Their conference they're 9-2. They have 6, 7 players in double digits this year, and Tobias Harris has been hurt. Right, that's their veteran player. Not the biggest fan of Tobias, but he still is one of their veteran players. So we'll see what happens. I personally think they actually try to flip Jaden Ivey and Tobias for another piece, because I don't think you keep Tobias. We've seen what Tobias has done in postseason. He's just not it. But with the Jaden Ivey part, I think he's a good player, but they won without him. So that's kind of the tough part. You know what I mean? They're winning without him since last year. That's finishes strong, and then this year. So you know, last thing I will say is, though, this is how you build a team. I think people try to build teams by trading for star players. It's not how you do it. How to build a professional team to compete, it takes time. Detroit's doing that, and that's why they're in the position they're at. So
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of wild, right? Because Cade and Duran were there during the horrid years of the Pistons, right? They were both on that team that won 14 games, or only 14 games, that lost like 28 games in a row. They were on that team, right? With Monty Williams as the coach, right? And now they're both part of a winning team, one of the best teams, one of the best stories in the league right now. And that's kind of, the next question, because you already kind of hinted at it, right? Where everybody's been talking about that for the Pistons, right? Lauri Markkanen seems like, an ideal trade piece, right? And, for the Detroit Pistons, right? Because people are talking about, because you mentioned Jaden Ivey and how they've been winning games without him. But, what do you guys think? Because do you feel like if you're Detroit that you should, kind of go in and kind of go and grab a guy like a Lauri Markkanen? Or do you kind of go with, the top notch approach, right? Where be patient and kind of just see what you have right now, and then kind of wait it out. Maybe when you're in the summer, do you make a decision then? Because I think there's arguments for both. I would probably hold out. I don't know if I would just automatically say, let's just go get Markkanen. I don't know. I mean, I know he's really good. He's been playing great, but I'm a little bit worried about just automatically doing that. I don't mind waiting it out, but I do understand, because if, Ivy's in year 4 or whatever, right? At some point, you're going to have to decide whether or not you want to pay him. I don't know if you can do some sign and trade negotiations or things like that, but what do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what's the price tag, the potential price tag for a guy like Markkinen, right? Like I would have assumed it's probably multiple first round picks, and then obviously multiple probably young guys as well. I think Utah would probably want a collection of younger players to go alongside that, but I wouldn't even entertain it, if you want me to be honest. They're winning games, they're balling out. Cade looks great, and Duran looks equally as good. So why even mess with anything that's going on there? And like Top Notch said, like, it's the slow grind. Like, you got to build it from the mud. Like, why are you trying to go out here and acquire something that could completely mess up the entire vibe that you have going? Because is he really going to fit in with the culture there too? It's another thing. That's a hard knocks team. I don't know if Markkinen's built like that. Just saying.
So yeah, the current trade price for Larry Marketing is currently Jaden Ivey, Ron Holland, Tobias Harris, 4 picks and 4 pick swaps. So pretty much what the Jazz are saying, they're not trading Larry Marketing. That's all that is, because that's way too much for a player like Marketing. Even though he's having a great season, I'm all good with that. Like you said, you got to build from the trenches, and that's what they did. That's why it's kind of a corny phase, right? Drake always says, "You started from the bottom, now there, right?" So I'm excited about this team. The only time you really make that type of move is like, yo, listen, we know we're gonna win a championship. You never know, but like this is a championship move. We're confident this is gonna work. Let's go all in. That's the only time you make those type of moves, and it works, right? I've seen football teams do it all the time at the trade deadline. Bam, we got to make this move. But right now, nah, you keep rolling with the team. But I do think they need to figure out a way with Tobias Harris, not trading for a star player. He's on an expiring contract. I don't think they signed him to an extension or anything like that. But him and Jaden Ivey, they can finagle something, get more shooters on their team because, like Khristopher said, you're gonna need shooting in playoffs. To have the pace slows down. You get into more half court offenses, and you're gonna be able to need to score. Cade can create his own shot, which is incredible. You also got Khristopher can come off the bench and give you buckets and stuff like that. But you got Karras, Duncan, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm not quite there in terms of let's go all in for marketing because I want to see more from the Pistons and kind of see where they're at, as they go to the deadline, as they go into the summer. I'm not quite ready to jump all in. I think you made a great point about, yeah, if you're really really close and you feel like that's the guy who can put you over the top, then go for it. But I don't know if they're there quite yet because I still am not quite sold on the idea of them winning multiple playoff series just yet. I want to see more. And I at least want to see what Ivy looks like when he comes back, right? Because, last year when he played, right, he figured out the catch and shoot game in terms of 40% from three. Because I remember Yarby and I talked about a couple seasons ago where we're like, do we like the fit with Cade and Ivy or Cade and Duran more? And we weren't really quite sure what to make of it at that time. So, now, it seemed like last season before Ivy got hurt, they kind of figured it out. So hopefully you can come back and figure that out, and then they can win even more games. So I'm with you. I'm not quite ready to sell all out on marketing just yet. I think I'd rather wait, and maybe somebody else comes along that you might like even more. Like you said, you don't necessarily have to trade those guys and the farm and picks. Maybe there's a way where you can maybe get a guy that's not quite as good, but maybe isn't quite as costly. Maybe doesn't cost you quite as many picks. Maybe you don't have to give up as many key players. That's probably what I would do. Maybe that's a little bit more of a conservative approach, but I think if you're the Pistons, that's probably the right move. Yeah, so now we're moving on into our next topic. We have a couple of teams to close it out where it's a sad note, I guess, depending on if you're a fan of the team, and then the other one is a more happy note. So I guess we'll probably start off with the feel-good story, and that's the Toronto Raptors, where this was a team where I picked the over on them, but I didn't necessarily look at them as a potential top 4 or 5 or even 6 seed in the Eastern Conference. I'm kind of looking at them like this is probably a play-in team because they're in the Eastern Conference. They have a number of players that are good players, but do they all fit together? Can they find a way to make it work? It's the Toronto Raptors, right? Winners of 5 in a row, 9-1 in their last 10, one of the better defensive teams in the league. And there's a lot of guys that you give credit to, right? I think you got to give credit to Scotty Barnes, where, you look at his counting stats, they don't necessarily look like he's taken a leap, but if you actually watch the Raptors play and watch what they're doing, he's doing a little bit of everything, right? He's giving you scoring with 19 points a game. He's even giving you some three-point shooting 39 from 3 on just under 4 attempts. He's giving you 8 rebounds, 5 assists, but he's also giving you great defense, right? 2 blocks, 1.4 steals. There was that game against the Charlotte Hornets, right, where both Brandon Ingram, but also he got the game-saving block, right, where they're both contesting guys at the rim, stopping guys. They got a ton of size and length out there. Jakob Poeltl looks pretty solid. Ingram has fit in pretty well, right? There's still times where it looks a little bit clunky, right? The three-point shooting isn't the most amazing, but they also surprisingly have one of the better benches in the NBA, right? Like this was a team where I don't think we necessarily felt that strongly about their second unit. Like we liked some of the players, but all of a sudden, like Sandro Mamukelashvili coming off the bench as a basically offensive-minded scoring big who's got some size, who can space the floor, gives them some more dimensions. Jamal Shed, right, who's just basically a pit bull defensively out there. Colin Murray-Boyles as a rookie, right, fitting in, switchable, can guard basically all 5 positions, right? So a lot to like. Even Emmanuel Quickley, right, who is kind of a polarizing player, the contract plus the caliber of player. He's played really well after kind of a slow, ugly start to the season, right? And that was kind of one of the key guys where we're like, okay, if they're going to figure out a way to make this work, Quickly's going to have to be a big part of that because they don't have a traditional point guard, but you have guys like Scotty Barnes and and Brandon Ingram who can run your offense. So, even Grady Dick off the bench, right? He's provided some value there. So there's a lot to like about this team. They're winning games. Their schedule's been a little bit soft. They've had a little bit of luck in terms of, some teams that have not been healthy, but it doesn't matter, right? You have to find ways to win. And if they can find ways to win before that schedule gets really difficult, as you get closer to that mid-late December stretch where they're going to be playing like Golden State, Orlando, Denver, maybe Atlanta when some of those other guys come back, LA, New York, and all those other teams. So it's going to be trickier as it goes on, but it's been a really feel good story, right? They're 10th in points per game. So just a lot to like, for a team where I think we thought they'd be better. But I mean, right now they're 10-5, and they're number 2 in the Eastern Conference as we're recording.
Yeah, it's kind of been wild to see, what they've been able to do thus far. I think one of the words that I used when we talked about this team in the offseason was interesting, and I think it's kind of played out a little bit, right? They have a very unique, I think, combination of a bunch of players, that can do a bunch offensively, but defensively, like you said, is where they're making a lot of their bread and butter. It's been a drastic, improvement, especially, with the young guys like Colin Murray Boyles. Great draft pick, by the way. But offensively too, super efficient. I think people's worry was it might look a little, jumbled and stuff like that, but it actually has looked pretty smooth. And I think that's everybody kind of playing their role, right? Like Scotty's not really forcing anything. Brandon Ingram's actually having a little bit of an underrated season, RJ as well. So, it's a good combination of guys. And I think IQ figuring it out as well definitely helps. And then the bench play is spectacular, right? You have guys like that are averaging like 16 or 7, it's just everything looks good overall. So shout out to Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, Yarby probably don't want to hear this. Toronto just beat the Wizards by
Yep.
31 points right now.
I was watching.
Yeah, and then Brandon Ingram had 24, right? RJ had 24, and Scotty had 23, and Emmanuel quickly had 17, and Sandro off the bench had 23 points and 7 rebounds. So it just shows you, man. Like Jakob, I don't know if Jakob Pertl got hurt this game because he only played 19 minutes, but I mean, this is a really good starting lineup. They're figuring out. They're now 11-5 currently. They're 9-2 in the conference. They're better away than home. They're 7-3 away, 3-2 at home. But once again, the two teams that started from the bottom, kind of like not really started from the bottom, but they built their young talent up. They made one big move, and they really didn't even trade much for Brandon Ingram. People are still questioning this move during the last year's trade deadline. Like, I don't know about this fit, but they didn't give up nothing valuable, to be honest with you, nothing crazy. And they're rolling with R.J. Barrett, they're rolling with Scotty Barnes and all their other draft picks. So that's the recipe of winning. And that's why the two teams are first and second, just holding it down. So good for Toronto. I am shocked. I'll be honest with you. Not some hating stuff. I'm just curious to see how if they can maintain it. That's all. That's the big thing about maintaining your record. I think the East is wide open, right? I think Knicks is okay. I don't think the Cavaliers are all that. Philly, right? And then it kind of gets a little shallow, right? I mean, like Miami, Chicago, Atlanta, Magic, Bucks, like it starts getting a little shallow. Like I don't, not the biggest fans of the East right now. So anybody can come take it, and it can be Detroit, it can be Toronto. Like the Pacers came out of nowhere and went to the finals last year. So Toronto has the recipe. They already been to the finals. Now I understand that was different teams. They had a loaded roster back in the day, but that they're possibly trying to build that up again, right? So we'll see. I love what they're doing though.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you mentioned 7-3 on the road. So most of their games have been on the road, right? Which is not an easy thing to do to still go 10-5. And back to that Brandon Ingram trade, right? New Orleans sent him to the Raptors for Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, 1 first and 1 second, right? So back then, the stock clearly wasn't that high, right? And I remember after New Orleans got bounced in the first round by Oklahoma City, right? Everybody was kind of looking at Ingram and they felt like his performance was underwhelming, right? Zion wasn't there. And you kind of figured at some point he'd probably get moved, he'd probably get traded, and he did. And, so far, Toronto's reaping the benefits of getting, a star level player without, like you said, really having to give up a whole lot. And everybody's been fitting in and finding ways to, contribute in their role, right? Be a star in their role. And that's kind of a cool thing to see because, we weren't quite sure how it would work. Like we figured there's not a lot of 3-point shooting. Can they still find ways to score? And yes, they have. And that's the cool point is last year, right, there was a huge conversation about all these teams, about how everybody's just spamming the 3-point shot, high pick and roll and everything. But if you watch a lot of these teams, there's a lot of teams that are very different from each other. I mean, like, the Raptors, and the Pistons and the Cavs and the Knicks, right? That's 1 through 4. Those are 4 completely different teams, right? Then toss Miami in there, toss Philly in there. Like, none of those teams you would say really play the same way. So, there's a lot to like about the Toronto Raptors. It's definitely one of the feel good stories along with the Pistons for sure. But now we got to move to a not so happy story, right? To close things out. That's the Los Angeles Clippers. They're 4-11, lost 3 in a row, one of their last 9, and it's not looking too great for them right now. We already talked about Bradley Beal out for the season with the fractured hip. Kawhi Leonard has missed, I think, the last, 8 or 9 games, and we still don't really know when he's coming back, right? It's something with his foot. And he hasn't taken contact, I don't think, in practice or anything yet, so he may still be a little bit away. Most of their additions, other than Collins, haven't really panned out, right? Lopez looks old and slow. Chris Paul looks old and slow. When you look at John Collins, like, he's played fine, right? Given what they gave up to get him. But then at the same time, look at Norman Powell in Miami, right? And that was kind of the glue that held everything together, right? Because when Kawhi Leonard was out for most of last season, it wasn't just Harden, it wasn't just Zubac, but it was also Norman Powell, right? And we understand why the Clippers did it, right? Because they were saving money, cutting costs. They probably didn't want to give him a long-term deal. It's just, this is kind of the worst case scenario for what happens, right? Where all your guys haven't really panned out. They're either hurt or they look like they're just done. And, with the fit with Collins and Zubac and Harden, it's just kind of weird, right? It just, like, Collins hasn't necessarily played poorly at all, but then you look at even Zubac, and Zubac doesn't really look like the same player from last year, right? Maybe it's just without another offensive guard, there's just more pressure on Zubac, especially with Kawhi out, and Harden's basically having to do everything, right? He's averaging 27, 6, and 9. He hasn't put up numbers like that pretty much since 2019, right? Like, essentially, like, it's been a while since he's put, or I guess 2021, right before he went to Brooklyn. So he hasn't had to put up numbers like that. And, credit to him at this age for still playing that well. But, it's really brutal for them. And it's not his fault. It's just they don't have a lot around them, and all these guys are hurt. People mention the aspiration thing. Maybe. I mean, I don't think that was something that's something that's kind of being brought up now, but I feel like most people kind of thought it wasn't going to matter because they were so deep. And the worst part about it is don't even have their pick, because no matter what happens, it goes to Oklahoma City. And if they keep losing and they miss the playoffs entirely, there's a chance Oklahoma City could either, could win the title and then come out of it and potentially have one of the best players in the draft. We don't know what's going to happen because, with the 9-10 spot, right? Like, Portland's lost 4 in a row. Feels like they may start to kind of fall off. Drew Holiday's hurt. Scoot still has a decent amount of time before he comes back. Are the Jazz going to keep winning? So the Clippers could still find a way to stumble into the top 10 and still be in the play-in and maybe even make the playoffs. But they're still kind of, to me, dead in the water unless some crazy trade happens, right? Like, because especially since they don't have their pick, you almost feel like they might be incentivized to try to do something to keep the season from falling apart. So could they be one of those teams that makes like a panic move, right? Could they go after one of the names we mentioned, like LaMelo Ball, or, we mentioned Ja Morant like last week, or Anthony Davis or somebody like that? I don't know, but it hasn't looked great, right? And even Ty Lue, I heard him mention a week or so ago, he was like, we don't have our third best player, referring to Bradley Beal. I don't know if you know this, but I don't think Bradley Beal is necessarily the third best player on the Clippers, right? I mean, so it just is rough. It's not great. This was a team that I wasn't quite as high on. I picked the under, but I still had them in tier 3. So I don't want to make it look like I just thought they were going to stink. But at the same time, my concern was I don't necessarily know if the guys that they signed are going to work, and I just don't necessarily believe in this core because it's tough to build around, your star player just doesn't consistently play. But I think the hope was you have so much depth it doesn't matter, but that depth is gone because most of those guys, like I said, have either not been great or it just hasn't panned out. It's ugly and it stinks if you're a Clipper fan.
Yeah, this is like an old broken down truck. I'm gonna be real. Like I don't know what this team is doing. Like there's so many old players on this roster that are I don't want to use the word wash, but it fries my brain to the point of like how did I
Right.
even think this team was going to be good? On paper, I love their offseason, like you said. You know, they went out and got some depth pieces. You bring in Beal for like a bargain at that point, while also, letting Norman Powell pretty much go for nothing as well. But in theory, you like Beal, James Harden, and Kawhi Leonard. Like on paper, that's a great team surrounded by the other guys that they have, like Derek Jones Jr. You have, and even like John Collins, like bringing in like bargain chips pretty much at this
Yeah.
point. And I don't know what happened. Everybody just sucked, and then Kawhi got hurt. It's the same story every single year. So I don't know. And they're probably gonna attribute a ton of freaking. They're gonna get a lot of credit for probably helping OKC win, back to back and multiple freaking championships because they're probably gonna get another lottery pick. I'm just fed up with the Clippers. Don't even really want to talk them, but yeah, if you're a Clipper fan, like I actually feel bad for you, bro. Realistically,
I'm laughing because I love how they go. Man, listen, bro. The problem with the Clippers is Ty Lue got to get fired. That's what he got to go. He got to get a body. He's the most overrated coach in the NBA. I don't care what he says. I've seen it with Russ when he's on the Clippers. He's just not good. Number two, he says these things in his head that think they're true. Bro, he pushed Bradley Beal like he's a superstar still. Yo, Bradley Beal is gonna be our top defender. No, he's not. Yo, Bradley Beal is gonna be our third best player. No, he's not. The dude Bradley Beal can't even. She's washed up,
exactly.
completely washed. Right? And then they go, okay, but we got Chris Paul and Brook Lopez. Chris Paul forgot how to play basketball. Brook Lopez can't even run up the court.
Yep.
Well, we got John Collins. Well, you traded Norman Powell, who's having a career year with Miami Heat. Well, we got Kawhi Leonard and Harden. Kawhi Leonard can't stay healthy. James Harden's literally the team. If James Harden's not scoring, no one else is scoring. Derek Jones Jr. is hurt. Chris Dunn, he's just not good enough offensively for him to stay consistent of them to keep scoring with these other teams. So the whole team's cooked. They got to let it go. The tough part about it is that they just got a new building, so they're trying to sell tickets, right? But this is why you don't buy teams. When you buy teams, you get into this position. Clippers, their whole time, their whole all phase of them trying to win is they bought players. Let's get Paul George. Let's get Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard completely ruined that franchise by just signing that deal with him and PG, and then PG never getting the money. It's like it's cooked. You know what I mean? I give it to them though. They always find a way to get some star players, and I wouldn't be surprised if somehow, some way, John Morant lands on the team or Anthony Davis or. Well, I wouldn't be surprised because they always find a way to get them, but it doesn't mean nothing because all it is just gonna be a little band-aid. They're gonna win a couple games. Oh, yeah, but then reality hits and gets in the playoffs, and then they lose.
Yep.
They're not better than no team in the Western Conference. Their record is showing. I truly feel bad for Harden because Harden somewhat is ring chasing and just can't. Every time he goes to a roster, he just never has his guys.
And he's
Never.
hooping though. He be hooping.
Yeah,
He's
he's playing really
hooping.
well.
Like he's hooping. Like
Yeah,
dude, for what? He's like 34, 30. I don't know how. He's around the
he's
late
36.
30s.
Yeah, he's 36.
36.
Yeah.
6 years old, right?
In year
Playing
16.
incredible basketball. It's crazy, dude. Like, so yeah, this Clippers team is a joke. I actually want them to continue to keep losing because they got to just break it up. You got to break it up. And the last thing I'll say is, I remember everybody says Chris Paul's better than Russ. Chris Paul can't even step on a court right now, bro. He can't even step on a court. Russ is giving you 20, 16, and 10. Like, realize you have to retire before the game retires you.
True.
And the game is retiring Chris Paul right now. Bunch of DMPs on a bad team. If you're getting DMPs on a bad team, you know you're cooked.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the wild thing with this Clippers team is because it feels like every year they tend to get the benefit of the doubt and they're always kind of in the discussion like of the, of the top teams, but it just seems like it just doesn't work out. And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, like it's like the if you remember the old Charlie Brown thing where it's like Lucy and the football, right? Where it's like she puts the football out and then she's like, "Yeah, I'll let you kick it this time." And then he goes up to kick it and then she just takes it right away from him. And that's literally what it feels like this Clippers thing is, where it just feels like every year it just doesn't really work out. That's just wild, right? But I mean, on paper, right? Like you could see maybe a world where it works out. I think if Beal hadn't gotten hurt, I think they would have just trended towards probably making him come off the bench. Because if you watch them play together, him and Harden together, it wasn't great, right? Like
It's
it just
non-existent.
defensively, it was food, right? It wasn't a good look. So that's kind of the weird thing, because they traded Norman Powell for Bradley Beal, and I think the argument was, well, hey, on paper, if you look at Beal's numbers last year in Phoenix, right? Like they didn't win, but like on paper, you could see him maybe being a decent Norman Powell replacement because he can attack the basket. He's a decent athlete. He can catch and shoot. He can score off the dribble. But he's just been hurt every year, and it just kind of feels like with a fractured hip, I don't know where you go from there. Like he may just be done because that's a really
His career's over with.
yeah, because that's a really awful injury to have. Like, just in terms of a fractured hip. So I don't know what the Clippers do. That's why, I'll kind of open it to you guys. Do you have a prediction in terms of like, will they crazily go for somebody at the deadline, or do you think they just kind of wallow in misery and just say, let's find some ways to win? Maybe we'll make a 8, 9, 10 seed spot, and maybe we'll just bow out in the first round to the team that we might give our pick to. Like, what do you guys think? Because I don't know. Because like you mentioned with the new building, there's no real incentive to just stink and just say let's tank, and you don't have your pick, so there's no incentive to lose games either. But they also, I don't know, they're not. I don't know if they've really done any like crazy drastic things in the last few seasons, right? Like it's mostly been stuff where it's like, how in the world did they do that? Kind of like what you mentioned, where it's like when they got Norman Powell, it was like Robert Covington and Eric Bledsoe or something like that, right? And those guys were also at that point done. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't even know what what to do. There's no way out if you want me to be real.
Right?
I'm
You trade Harden,
I mean that's the guy who has the most value, but
right?
I don't know. Like what are you going to get back for him at this point too? Um yeah, it wouldn't
Nothing.
surprise me if they do find a way to get one of these players that doesn't want to be on one of these teams, right? Like AD, that could be intriguing, but it's not gonna matter. It's not like it's gonna translate to wins. It's gonna
Right.
it's gonna it's gonna generate a little bit of hype, but hype means nothing for that franchise. They need wins, and they can't find a way to win, whether it be in the regular season or the postseason. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's,
Well,
it's just go on.
I think the problem with the Clippers as well is like yeah, I understand they get late draft picks, but they can't draft to save their lives, bro. I mean,
Yeah,
dude, you got Kobe Brown, who, dude, I thought like, okay, let's put some hype. Dude, this dude sucks. Cam Christie, I mean, like, I guess give him time, but I'm just like, not the biggest fan of. And it's just like they can't draft, so that's why they make these trades for star players, right? But even if they're making these trades for star players, they can't get over the hump. They lost in Game 7 last year, where their two star players struggled in Game 7 against Denver, right? Like, I
Mhm.
think the best thing for them is they're just gonna go out there and trade for Ja Morant. And it's gonna be like, yo, we got Ja James and Kawhi. We'll be all right. We'll be fine. Let's get the top 10. That's what they're gonna do. I'm calling it now. What's today? Today is November 21st. They're gonna find a way to get Ja Morant. They're gonna trade pieces that I never heard of, and Memphis is gonna take it because somehow, some way, they always find a way to land somebody, no matter what. And honestly, if you think about it, they have no future. Ja could be their future. Really want to think about it. They have no future over there. Maybe Ja can be there because Kawhi, dude, Kawhi Leonard is cooked. Like this dude is cooked, bro. Like beyond cooked.
yeah,
Um, and if I tell you this, James Harden has been a pro, but when James Harden starts getting into that James Harden that we all know
yeah,
when when he wants out, get messy.
yeah.
James Harden will get to that point, and we already seen it. We've
Yep.
seen it in Houston, we've seen it in Brooklyn. So they're
Philly,
hoping that he don't do that.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, Philly. Yep.
it's crazy,
So
bro.
we seen
That
all
one, I
that.
guess, the Daryl Morey thing kind of
Yeah,
also didn't
valid,
help.
but it's still messy though.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So
Still
that's the
messy.
question. Yeah, that's the question. And it's funny that you point out, like, in terms of not a lot of young players on the roster, right? Because we mentioned, like, okay, you have an older team, but you could kind of supplant that if you have some younger rookies or some younger okay players on there. I guess Zubac is kind of in his prime. He just hasn't played as well this year. But, there are some teams where it does kind of feel like, yeah, you're just missing one solid young rotational piece. Like, even if you look at a team, like the Knicks, like they did draft Mitchell Robinson, so that's part of it. But like they're a team where it's like, could you get one of those younger players off the bench to be like a real legit rotational player, right? Like Dadier or Huck Porty or Kolek or something like that. And I'm not just trying to single them out, but just, that's something that at least for the 82 could help you win regular season games, because we've always talked about, yeah, like there are teams that can kind of come out of the play in and find ways to make a run. But if you want to really win it all, you do need to kind of be a 50 plus win top 4 seed ideally. And one of the ways you can do that is if you have, younger players on your team to kind of get you through the 82, right? Like, I mean, look at Oklahoma City, look at Houston, right? Look at the Spurs, Denver is not like a super young team, but they do have some guys. But just in general, like a lot of these teams right now, that's what they need. So, and the Clippers don't really have that. And like you mentioned, because they don't have that, they don't really have a future, right? Like none of the young players on their roster, you're like, yeah, this is a foundational piece. So that's where you could see them going after that. But who knows? Does anybody think that the aspiration stuff, the tree planting business, does that have anything to do with what's going on? Or is it kind of just coping? Because I've heard that from other, analysts and, some other people that they think maybe it has to do with it. I feel like it might be a little bit of cope just to kind of cover up for like some people I think were probably higher on this team than they should have been. But do you think that that's a factor at all? Maybe it might be somewhat, but I don't feel like it's this.
No, not at all. It's just bad roster construction. Point blank period. You're building around a guy who breaks down every two games. Like I said, Harden is the bright spot. Can't even say anything bad about him. Like Beal played what? 7 games, maybe less, and quite literally is out for the season. He's not coming back, bro. It's like what everything that could have gone wrong for this team went wrong. You got the worst version of pretty much every single player that you signed, but maybe like John Collins. Like I'll give it to them. John Collins, I think, was a hit. Everything else was a complete and utter strikeout. I couldn't believe it. I can't believe it. Like Brooke Lopez, garbage.
Yeah.
Chris Paul, garbage.
Yeah.
All garbage.
And that was
wash.
and that was a guy that was supposed to be, like one of the premier free agent signings of the offseason,
Exactly.
right? Like we all remember that. Like I remember we had at least like a week's discussion of before we even knew he was going to the Clippers. It's like, yeah, he might be the Lakers starting center.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, no, thank you. And so he played in total 6 games. So I guess
Wow.
I think what was it, like a $5-6 million deal? So like $1 million for each game played.
And he's
So,
still getting
there you go.
paid the other contract, right?
Yeah, from Phoenix. Yeah, he's still getting paid the weighted stretch
Oh
number
yeah,
from
the
Phoenix.
Wizards
Phoenix.
contract. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and look at Phoenix right now, by the way. Like that might be a team we'll probably save for another podcast because they're playing really well right now. So,
Yeah.
seems like seems like the Clippers might be the one unhappy camp in the Bradley Beal business.
For real, bro.
Yeah. So now I guess to close it out, like how we normally do, we go back to our polling that we normally do. So our last short that we posted, we asked the question of where will the Lakers finish this season, just in terms of seeding. And according to the responses, we got 71% said top 3 seed, then 14% said 4 to 6 seed, 14% said play in, then 0% said out of the playoffs. So what do we think?
Who the hell said playing?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. It doesn't tell me who. It just says the percentages.
Yo, I'm not a Lakers fan. I actually hate the Lakers. I don't like the Lakers. But I'm not gonna come on here and be like, yeah, they're a playing team. Like,
Yeah.
and out of the playoffs, like that's just trolling. Like that's not, you know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
usually gonna be a top 6.
Yeah.
The top 6.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with
Yeah.
you. I don't think they fall off. Like there's no shot. There's no shot they miss the playoffs, and there's definitely no shot they're in the play-in. Like unless everybody gets hurt somehow and they have like the worst injury season of all time. Yeah, but no, that's not gonna happen. So
And LeBron was already out. They won games without
Yeah.
Luka, without LeBron.
Exactly.
Austin Reeves took over. Like, yo, I don't like them. They're a good team. Simple as that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the main thing is that like yeah, they've been able to find ways to win. Then the schedule will get tougher, but the schedule already was tough with the guys out as is. So, they said 1 through 3. Top 3, I don't think so, because I think Houston will probably be in the top 3. But, yeah, out of the playoffs, that one might be a little bit
Yeah, for real.
if you get like relatively decent health the rest of the way, like you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, that pretty much concludes today's episode of Off Ball Takes. Let us know your thoughts in the comments on everything we've discussed today, right? Where do you think LaMelo Ball should go? How about these teams that are playing well? How about these teams that absolutely stink? And of course, if you want to do that, go to @the OBT Podcast, any of our socials, and then continue to like and subscribe as well to help the channel grow. Appreciate all of it. We'll see you next time.